When Finding Nemo came out, people went nuts. They were in love with this movie. They love the characters, they love the underwater world, they love the colors, they love the story. People absolutely fell in love with it. And while I don't think it's quite as strong as, say, Toy Story or some of the other films, it's still pretty damn good. What's the premise? We have a clownfish played by Albert Brooks. He sadly lost his wife and all of his children to a nasty predator. That is, all except for one child, the one that he calls Nemo. Because of his loss, he's overprotective of Nemo and wants to be sure that nothing ever happens to him. What a shock, something happens to him. Nemo is taken away by a scuba diver and put in a little fish tank in a dentist's office. In Australia of all places, that's a unique location. So of course his father is on an endless quest to find his son. Along the way, he comes across a fish named Dory, played by Ellen DeGeneres. She has a fun gimmick of having short-term memory loss, which you would think very quickly would get old, but they work it in pretty cleverly. It gets big laughs and people really seem to enjoy it, and I enjoyed it too. They come across other characters like menacing sharks, schools of organized fish, the list goes on. Nemo as well comes across a bunch of interesting characters. A group of various fish who try to figure out a way out of their tank and back to the sea. Their plan is so creatively out there that it's impossible not to actually think it might friggin' work. But they have to go quick because Nemo might be in danger of being given to the dentist's daughter, a crazy looking little child who has a habit of shaking her fish to death. Now that's a face only a mother can love. Finding Nemo has a solid story and some solid characters. I think this one plays up the drama even more than the previous Pixar films. It took a few more chances with what it could get away with and just how serious it could take itself. And not just with the characters, I think the environment, the music, and the colors really play a big part in making everything come together from a dramatic standpoint. The sea is a very dramatic, mysterious place, with many dangers and many allies. It's a great adventure that has just the right story and characters to help it pay off. At times, maybe it can get a little too dialogue-y. I mean, come on, you know the lesson in the first 5 minutes, and yet they still kind of keep hammering it in. But it's not a bad lesson. In fact, it's one that's really more for parents than it is for kids. That's kind of different. And again, give kudos to these movies for actually making lessons for adults and not always for children. You don't see that very often. I like kids' films that do that. The characters are too many to count. They're all memorable, they're all fun, you remember what each of them looks like. They're all wonderfully unique creations. I'm glad they don't take the route where they have Ellen DeGeneres and Albert Brooks fall in love either. I mean, I know some people would say it's obvious because Ellen herself is a lesbian, but you know what? Anytime they throw a female and a male together, usually they hook up. And especially with the mother being dead, this would be very tempting. I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they just left her as a unique character, a companion, a good friend. That's all it was meant to be, and they didn't feel like they need to force anything else. I don't know, what else can I say about this movie? It just has so many things that a movie should have. It's adventurous, it's dramatic, it's funny, it's colorful, it's dark, it's bright, it has everything. Does every dramatic moment hit a bullseye? No. Does every joke get a big laugh? No. But the majority do, and it's obvious they're writing from their hearts. And that passion and care really does shine through. Good characters, good story, good morals, good visuals, what else could you need? Finding Nemo is a thrilling adventure under the sea. Mixed thoughts about The Incredibles. My guess is this is because it was bringing a lot of stuff to the big screen that I wanted to see for a while, but maybe that got me a little too overhyped. For example, it was great seeing a computer animated film by Brad Bird, whose work I really enjoyed in Iron Giant, The Simpsons, hell, even Family Dog. It was great seeing a comedic superhero movie, which at the time we only sort of got The Tick and maybe one or two other ones that didn't really go anywhere. So it was great seeing an awesome team of writers from Pixar take on a subject matter like this. I also like the idea that it's a superhero family. We haven't seen that before, and it allows for a lot of creative characters and powers and abilities, and oh gosh, this is just gonna be awesome! In the golden age of superheroes, Mr. Incredible is one of the most famous. How'd he get his superpowers? Pfft, who cares? They just exist. And apparently they exist for a lot of other superheroes who apparently just have superpowers. It's cool, I'll buy it. Mr. Incredible gets married to Elastigirl, and it looks like they're gonna live happily ever after being superheroes with their secret identities and so forth. But then things go awry when the people who are saved start suing the superheroes for property damage, physical health, mental health, all sorts of American bullshit. Soon everybody starts suing superheroes, and all the superheroes, or supers as they're called, have to go into a protection agency where they can't use their powers at all. Mr. Incredible is now Mr. Parr, and he has started a family with Mrs. Parr. They have 3 children who, as you'd expect, also have superpowers. And while the rest of the family, for the most part, seem to fit in okay without using their powers, Mr. Parr is going through the always popular midlife crisis. He misses the golden days, the sense of adventure, hates being in an office, and hates turning people down. In fact, he even performs superhero jobs on the side, but never lets his wife know. Things start to change though when he gets a letter from a woman named Mirage, who has a ton of secret missions lined up for him and wants him to return to the glory days of superherohood. Mr. Parr agrees, going behind his family's back, but little does he know that a villain named Syndrome is actually planning the whole thing. It's nice to see a Pixar film that actually focuses on people for once. And what I like is that they don't try to make them look like actual people, they try to make them look like 3D cartoons. Brad Bird always had great designs for his animations, and they show here. It doesn't look like something that started being designed in a computer, it looks like it was drawn first, and then turned into a 3D model. That makes the designs as well as the characters much more memorable. It's also nice to see Pixar continue with its dramatic tone. Incredibles actually doesn't have as many laughs as you would think it would. It focuses more on Mr. Parr's midlife crisis, how all the color is sucked out of his world and how he wants a little sympathy from his family whether it's really deserving to him or not. But that's kind of my main problem with the film. The movie is called The Incredibles, but really it should have been called Mr. Incredible and His Family, because the focus is mostly on him, and to be honest, you can kind of get the gist of what he's going through in maybe the first 10 minutes. The family gets focused too, but not until the last third, really. And I like the family a lot. I like Mrs. Parr, I like Dash, I like Violet, I like that baby that has that psychotic breakdown at the end. I really wanted more of them. I wanted more of their powers. I wanted more of their personality. I wanted to see more of their interactions. And like I said, we do get a lot of that in the last third, but the majority of it is dealing with Mr. Parr's midlife crisis. And for me, I think it just has too much focus. There's still some redeeming qualities in the first 2/3 though. For example, there's this really great designer character that's actually voiced by Brad Bird as well. She designs the costumes for the family. It's a lot of fun just seeing her almost psychotic passion for what she does. But voice acting aside, one of the sad weaknesses of Brad Bird's work is that the stories are often a little choppy. As much as I love Iron Giant and a lot of his other works, I'll be the first to admit that the narratives are not very flowing. I mean, they work okay, and the characters I think are ultimately what pulls it through. But they always seem to jump around a bit, and I always feel one more rewrite would probably make these films a little stronger. But again, that's in no way saying that The Incredibles or his other films are by any means failures. They're not. The strongest point of the movie is the last third, where you see the powers being used, you see the family interacting, you see the comedy, you see the action, you see the villain, you see all the stuff that you're waiting for. And it is well worth the wait. I only wish I could have seen more of this in the first 2/3. I think if they did that, I probably would have really loved this movie. But for what it is, when it does get to the parts that it does really well, it's a ton of fun. And it's smart, and it's emotional, and it has good jokes. I think Brad Bird's biggest strength is his connections with families. I love how the mother talks to the kids very much like how a mother would talk to her kids, even if it is a very bizarre setup. I also like the way he writes kids. They're very energized, but they're insecure as well. They're troublemakers, but they're not stupid. And they have a lot of personality. Do I wish there was more focus on them and Mrs. Parr? Absolutely. But for what it is, it's very entertaining and very creative, even if it is a little inconsistent. It's a good film if you just manage to get through some of the slower scenes. And like I said before, it's great to finally see Pixar branching out and actually working with human characters. They don't have to keep the focus on creatures or toys or materials that just come to life. This is opening a whole new door for... yeah. Join me in the next review.
Of course!